The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floor of the executive suite as Victoria Thompson reviewed the quarterly reports spread across her mahogany desk. At 38, she had built Thompson Luxury Motors from a single used car lot into a chain of 15 premium dealerships across 3 states. Her business empire specialized in high-end European vehicles, and her reputation for excellence had earned her recognition as one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the automotive industry. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. The message reminded her about the surprise inspection she had planned for the newest location in Riverside Hills, an upscale suburb where many of her wealthy clients resided. This particular dealership had been underperforming lately, and several customers had complained about poor service quality. As the CEO, Victoria believed in leading by example and maintaining the highest standards across all locations. She decided to conduct the inspection incognito, wanting to experience firsthand what regular customers encountered when they walked through the doors. Victoria had learned this technique early in her career, understanding that managers and staff often behaved differently when they knew the boss was watching. The only way to get an authentic picture was to blend in with ordinary customers. Victoria chose her outfit carefully that morning. Instead of her usual designer business suits, she selected a simple pair of jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and comfortable sneakers. She pulled her long hair back into a casual ponytail and left her expensive jewelry at home. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The transformation was complete. She looked like any other person who might wander onto a car lot. The drive to Riverside Hills took about 40 minutes through busy city traffic. As Victoria approached the dealership, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This location represented a significant investment for her company, and its success was crucial for her expansion plans. The building itself was impressive, a modern glass structure with sleek lines and the Thompson Luxury Motors logo prominently displayed. Victoria parked her modest Honda Civic in a visitor spot and walked toward the main entrance. She had deliberately chosen to drive her personal car instead of one of the luxury vehicles from her collection. The contrast between her casual appearance and the expensive cars on display would provide the perfect test of her staff's professionalism and commitment to treating all customers with respect. As she entered the showroom, Victoria was immediately struck by the pristine condition of the facility. The floors were spotless, the cars were perfectly positioned, and everything seemed to be in order. Several well-dressed customers were speaking with sales representatives, and the atmosphere appeared professional and welcoming. However, Victoria noticed that most of the customers being served were white, while a few other minority customers seemed to be waiting without assistance. She made mental notes about the dynamics she observed, but decided to give her staff the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps the sales team was simply busy with existing appointments. Victoria approached a display featuring a beautiful silver Mercedes-Benz sedan. She had always admired this particular model, and it represented exactly the type of vehicle her dealership specialized in selling. As she examined the car's features, she waited for a sales representative to approach her. This was standard practice in the automotive industry. Potential customers browsing the showroom should be greeted promptly and offered assistance. Minutes passed, but no one approached her. Victoria continued to walk around the vehicle, looking at the interior through the windows and reading the specification placard. She could see several sales representatives nearby, but they seemed focused on other activities. Some were chatting among themselves, while others were arranging paperwork at their desks. Growing increasingly frustrated, Victoria decided to take a more direct approach. She walked over to the nearest sales desk where a young man in a crisp blue shirt was organizing brochures. His name tag identified him as Derek, and he appeared to be in his mid-20s with perfectly styled hair and an expensive watch. "Excuse me," Victoria said politely. "I'm interested in learning more about the Mercedes sedan over there." "Could you help me with some information?" Derek looked up from his brochures, and his expression immediately changed when he saw Victoria. His friendly demeanor disappeared, replaced by a look of barely concealed annoyance. He glanced around the showroom as if checking to see if anyone more important needed his attention. "That's a pretty expensive car," Derek replied dismissively. Are you sure you're in the right place? Maybe you should try the used car lot down the street. Victoria felt a surge of anger but maintained her composure. She had encountered discrimination before in her business career, but experiencing it at her own dealership was particularly painful. She decided to push forward with her test, curious to see how far this behavior would go. I understand it's expensive, Victoria replied calmly. I've been saving for a while and I think I'm ready to make a purchase. Could you at least show me the features and discuss financing options? Derek sighed audibly, clearly irritated by her persistence. Look, lady, I don't have time to waste on tire kickers. That car costs more than most people make in a year. Unless you can prove you're serious, I've got real customers to help. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She looked around the showroom and noticed that other staff members had witnessed the exchange but said nothing. In fact, she caught a few of them smirking as if Derek's behavior was somehow amusing or justified. Victoria realized that this wasn't just one bad employee. It was a systemic problem that had developed at this location. The culture she had worked so hard to build, based on respect and excellence, had been corrupted. Every customer, regardless of their appearance or background, deserved to be treated with dignity and professionalism. I see, Victoria said quietly. And who is your manager? I'd like to speak with them about your customer service policies. Derek rolled his eyes and pointed toward a glass office at the back of the showroom. Mr. Patterson is in there, but he's going to tell you the same thing I just did. We cater to a certain clientele here, if you know what I mean. Victoria followed Derek's gesture and saw a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit sitting behind a large desk. Through the glass walls of his office, she could see him laughing with two other staff members. The casual atmosphere suggested they weren't discussing business matters, but rather enjoying some sort of private joke. As Victoria walked toward the office, she felt the weight of every step. This moment would determine not just the fate of her employees, but also the integrity of the company she had built from nothing. She had faced many challenges in her journey to success, but this personal betrayal by her own staff felt particularly devastating. The other customers in the showroom continued their conversations, unaware that they were witnessing a moment that would change everything at Thompson Luxury Motors. Victoria's decision to conduct this unannounced inspection was about to reveal truths that would shake the foundation of her business and test her resolve as a leader who refused to compromise on her principles. Victoria approached the glass office with measured steps, her heart pounding but her expression remaining calm. Through the transparent walls, she could see Manager Patterson more clearly now. He was a stocky man in his 50s with graying hair and an air of self-importance. His office was decorated with golf trophies and expensive artwork, suggesting someone who enjoyed the finer things in life. Patterson was engaged in animated conversation with two other employees, occasionally gesturing toward the showroom floor. Victoria couldn't hear their words, but their body language suggested they were discussing the customers outside. When one of them pointed in her direction, all three men burst into laughter. Victoria knocked on the glass door firmly. Patterson looked up with an expression of mild annoyance, as if her interruption was unwelcome. He gestured for her to enter while continuing his conversation with the other employees for a few more seconds, deliberately making her wait. Yes? Patterson said without standing up or offering her a seat. Derek said you wanted to speak with management. That's correct, Victoria replied, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the disrespectful treatment. I'm interested in purchasing a vehicle, but your sales staff seems unwilling to assist me. I was hoping you could explain your customer service policies. Patterson leaned back in his leather chair and studied Victoria from head to toe. His gaze was calculating and dismissive, taking in her casual clothing and modest appearance. He exchanged a knowing look with the two employees who were still lingering in his office. Ma'am, let me be frank with you, Patterson said with a condescending smile. This is a luxury dealership. Our vehicles start at around $80,000 and go up from there. We deal with doctors, lawyers, business executives, people with substantial means. I don't think this is the right fit for someone in your situation. Victoria felt the familiar sting of discrimination, but she had experienced enough prejudice in her career to recognize it immediately. What shocked her more was the brazen nature of Patterson's attitude. He wasn't even trying to hide his bias or maintain a professional facade. "My situation?" Victoria asked, keeping her voice steady. "And what situation would that be?" Patterson gestured vaguely at her appearance. "Look, I'm trying to save us both some time here. Our financing requirements are very strict. We need proof of income, excellent credit scores, substantial down payments. Most of our customers pre-qualify before they even walk through the door." One of the employees in the office snickered quietly. Victoria noticed his name tag identified him as Brian, and he appeared to be enjoying the confrontation. The other employee, whose name tag read Marcus, looked somewhat uncomfortable but said nothing to challenge his manager's behavior. "I understand your requirements," Victoria said calmly. "I'm prepared to discuss financing and provide whatever documentation you need. All I'm asking for is the same level of service you provide to other customers." Patterson sighed dramatically and stood up from his desk. "All right, fine. But I'm warning you, when you can't qualify for financing, don't waste more of our time. Brian, show her to a desk and get her started on the credit application. Maybe when she sees the numbers, she understands this isn't a realistic option for her." Brian reluctantly agreed and led Victoria to a small desk in a corner of the showroom. The location was deliberately positioned away from the main customer area, almost hidden behind a pillar. Victoria realized this was probably where they sent customers they didn't expect to actually complete a purchase. "Okay, so what kind of work do you do?" Brian asked, pulling out a standard credit application form. His tone suggested he was going through the motions rather than genuinely trying to help. "I'm in business," Victoria replied simply. "What kind of business?" Brian pressed, his pen poised over the form. "Automotive," Victoria said, watching Brian's reaction carefully. Brian looked up with surprise and a hint of suspicion. "Really? Like you work at a dealership or something?" "Something like that," Victoria confirmed as Brian continued with the application process. Victoria observed the activity around the showroom. She watched as other customers, all of whom appeared to be white and well-dressed, received immediate attention from multiple sales staff. They were offered refreshments, given detailed tours of vehicles, and treated with obvious respect and enthusiasm. Meanwhile, she noticed that a young Hispanic couple had been waiting near the SUV section for nearly 20 minutes without anyone approaching them. An elderly black gentleman who had been examining a luxury sedan was actively being ignored by passing sales staff. The pattern was clear and undeniable. "So what's your annual income?" Brian asked, clearly expecting to write down a number that would disqualify her immediately. Victoria paused, considering how to respond. She could easily prove her financial qualifications, but that would end her investigation prematurely. Instead, she decided to continue gathering evidence of the discriminatory practices. "Why don't we focus on the vehicle first?" Victoria suggested. "I'd like to take a test drive and learn more about the features before we get into detailed financial discussions." Brian looked frustrated. "Look, we don't do test drives until we know you're qualified to buy. That's company policy." Victoria knew this was completely false. Thompson Luxury Motors had never implemented such a policy. In fact, she had always encouraged her staff to be generous with test drives, understanding that the experience of driving a luxury vehicle often sealed the deal for customers. "That's interesting," Victoria said. "Is that a new policy?" "It's been in place for a while," Brian lied smoothly. "Mr. Patterson implemented it to prevent unauthorized people from taking our cars for joyrides." The phrase "unauthorized people" hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Victoria understood exactly what Brian meant, and the implication made her stomach turn. This wasn't just poor customer service, it was systematic discrimination, designed to exclude certain types of customers from even experiencing the products. While Brian continued with his paperwork charade, Victoria overheard a conversation at the next desk. A well-dressed white man was discussing the same Mercedes model she had initially inquired about. The sales representative was enthusiastically explaining features, offering a test drive, and discussing financing options without any preliminary credit checks. Would you like to take it for a spin? The sales representative asked the customer. I've got the keys right here, and we can have you on the road in 5 minutes. The contrast was stark and undeniable. Victoria realized that her investigation had uncovered something far worse than simple incompetence. This was a deliberate system designed to discourage minority customers while providing preferential treatment to white clients. Patterson emerged from his office and walked over to check on Brian's progress. He glanced at the application form and shook his head disapprovingly. How's it going? Patterson asked Brian, loud enough for Victoria to hear. She says she works in automotive, but she won't specify her income level, Brian reported. Patterson turned to Victoria with a patronizing expression. Ma'am, if you can't provide basic financial information, we can't move forward with this process. I think it's time for you to consider more realistic options. Victoria stood up slowly, her decision crystallizing in her mind. She had seen enough to understand that this wasn't an isolated incident or a training issue. The problem ran deep, starting with management and spreading throughout the staff culture. Actually, Victoria said quietly, I think it's time for me to make a phone call. She pulled out her cell phone and scrolled through her contacts. Patterson and Brian watched with growing confusion as she selected a number and waited for someone to answer. Hello, Karen? Victoria said into the phone. This is Victoria Thompson. I need you to prepare termination paperwork for several employees at the Riverside Hills location. Yes, immediately. Patterson's face went pale as he heard the name Victoria Thompson. Brian looked confused at first, then gradually began to realize the significance of what was happening. Around the showroom, other employees started to take notice of the phone conversation. Also, please contact our legal department, Victoria continued. We may need to review our hiring practices and implement additional diversity training across all locations. The showroom fell silent as the implications became clear. Victoria Thompson, the CEO and owner of Thompson Luxury Motors, had been standing among them the entire time, witnessing their discriminatory behavior firsthand. The woman they had dismissed and humiliated was actually their ultimate boss, the person who signed their paychecks and controlled their futures. The silence in the showroom was deafening. Patterson's face had drained of all color, and his hands began to shake slightly as the full realization hit him. Brian dropped his pen, which clattered loudly on the desk in the otherwise quiet space. Around the showroom, other employees had stopped their conversations and were staring in disbelief. Victoria ended her phone call and turned to face Patterson directly. Her casual appearance remained the same, but her entire demeanor had shifted. Gone was the patient, humble customer who had been seeking basic service. In her place stood a confident business executive who commanded respect and expected accountability. Mr. Patterson, Victoria said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. I believe we need to have a serious conversation about your management practices and the culture you've created at this location. Patterson's mouth opened and closed several times before he could form words. Miss Thompson, I had no idea. I mean, we weren't told you were coming. That was the point, Victoria replied calmly. A true assessment of customer service can only happen when employees don't know they're being evaluated. What I witnessed today was not an anomaly. It was a systematic pattern of discrimination that has no place in my company. Derek, who had initially dismissed Victoria so rudely, had approached from across the showroom. His earlier confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by obvious panic. Miss Thompson, please, I can explain ... Victoria held up a hand to stop him. There's nothing to explain, Derek. Your behavior spoke for itself. You made assumptions about my ability to purchase a vehicle based solely on my appearance. You were rude, dismissive, and unprofessional. Those are not the values this company was built on. Other customers in the showroom were beginning to understand what was happening. Some had pulled out their phones, recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The well-dressed man who had been offered the immediate test drive looked particularly uncomfortable, realizing he had benefited from the same discriminatory system that had disadvantaged Victoria. Everyone, please gather around, Victoria announced to the staff. I want to address this situation with complete transparency. Reluctantly, the sales team assembled near the center of the showroom. Some looked ashamed, others appeared defiant, and a few seemed genuinely confused about what they had done wrong. Victoria studied their faces, trying to assess which employees might be salvageable with proper training and which had attitudes too deeply ingrained to change. For those who don't know me, Victoria began, I'm Victoria Thompson, the founder and CEO of Thompson Luxury Motors. I started this company 15 years ago with a vision of providing exceptional service to all customers, regardless of their background, appearance, or perceived financial status. What I witnessed today represents a complete betrayal of those principles. Marcus, the employee who had seemed uncomfortable during the earlier confrontation, raised his hand tentatively. Miss Thompson, some of us have tried to serve all customers equally, but we've been told that certain approaches are more efficient for the business. Victoria's eyes sharpened as she focused on Marcus. What do you mean by certain approaches? Well, Marcus continued hesitantly, glancing nervously at Patterson. Mr. Patterson has told us that we need to focus on qualified prospects and not waste time on people who probably can't afford our vehicles. He said we should be able to tell just by looking at someone whether they're worth our attention. Patterson stepped forward quickly, trying to interrupt. Now wait a minute, Marcus. You're taking my words out of context. Let him finish, Victoria said firmly. Marcus, please continue. He showed us how to read customer signals, things like clothing, shoes, jewelry, even the car someone drives to the lot. He said successful salespeople learn to prioritize their time based on these indicators. Marcus paused, then added quietly, and he mentioned that certain demographic groups were less likely to complete purchases, so we shouldn't invest too much effort in them. The implications of Marcus's statement hung heavy in the air. Victoria felt a surge of anger, not just at the discrimination itself, but at the way it had been systematized and taught as legitimate business practice. This wasn't just prejudice, it was institutional racism disguised as sales strategy. Is this true, Mr. Patterson? Victoria asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Patterson's face was now red with embarrassment and fear. Miss Thompson, you have to understand, we're under pressure to meet sales targets. I was just trying to help the team work more efficiently. By teaching them to discriminate against potential customers based on race and appearance? That's not... I never said anything about race specifically. Victoria pulled out her phone again. Marcus, would you be willing to repeat what you just told me in a formal statement to our HR department? Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied without hesitation. And are there other employees who received similar training? Several hands slowly rose around the group. Victoria counted at least 6 out of the 12 staff members present. The scope of the problem was even larger than she had initially realized. Brian, Victoria turned to the employee who had been processing her fake application. You mentioned company policies about test drives that I know don't exist. Where did you learn about these supposed policies? Brian looked like he wanted to disappear. Mr. Patterson told us about them during our monthly sales meeting. He said they were new guidelines from corporate to prevent problems. What kind of problems? He said some customers just waste our time and tie up inventory without any real intention to buy. He told us we needed to pre-qualify people better. Victoria's investigation was revealing a carefully constructed system of discrimination. Patterson had created unofficial policies and training that violated both company values and federal anti-discrimination laws. He had done it systematically, presenting his prejudices as legitimate business strategies. Mr. Patterson, Victoria said, you're terminated, effective immediately. Please clear out your office and turn in your company property. Security will escort you from the premises. Patterson's face went through several emotions, shock, anger, then desperation. Miss Thompson, please reconsider. I've been with this company for 8 years. My sales numbers are strong. Your sales numbers are irrelevant when you've created a hostile environment for both customers and employees. Derek, you're also terminated. Your behavior today was completely unacceptable and inconsistent with our company values. Derek started to protest, but Victoria continued. Brian, you have a choice. You can participate in comprehensive diversity training and work under close supervision, or you can look for employment elsewhere. What's your decision? I'll take the training, Brian said quickly. I really didn't realize. I want to do better. Victoria turned to address the remaining staff. This company was built on the principle that every customer deserves respect and professional service. That's not just a nice slogan, it's a fundamental business requirement. We serve people from all backgrounds because that's not only the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do. She gestured toward the Hispanic couple who were still waiting patiently near the SUV section. Right now, you have potential customers who have been ignored for over 30 minutes. You have an elderly gentleman who was interested in our luxury sedan but received no assistance. How many sales have you lost because you made assumptions about people's ability to purchase? The staff members began to look around the showroom, finally seeing the situation through their CEO's eyes. The discrimination they had been practicing wasn't just morally wrong, it was bad for business. From today forward, Victoria continued, every customer who enters this dealership will be greeted promptly and professionally. You will offer test drives to anyone who expresses interest. You will provide the same level of service regardless of someone's appearance, age, race, or any other factor. This is not optional, it's a condition of your continued employment. The transformation in the showroom was immediate and visible. Sales staff began approaching the previously ignored customers, offering assistance and apologizing for the delay. The atmosphere shifted from one of exclusion to inclusion, from judgment to service. Within minutes of Victoria's announcement, the entire dynamics of the showroom had transformed. Sales representatives who had been lingering aimlessly were now actively engaging with every customer present. The Hispanic couple, Maria and Carlos Hernandez, were finally approached by a sales associate who apologized profusely for the delay and began showing them the features of the SUV they had been examining. Victoria watched with satisfaction as her staff scrambled to correct their behavior, but she knew that lasting change would require more than just immediate compliance. She needed to understand how deep the problems ran and ensure that similar situations weren't occurring at her other locations. Marcus, Victoria called out, I'd like you to serve as interim manager while we sort this situation out. Can you handle that responsibility? Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied, straightening his shoulders with newfound confidence. I'll make sure everyone follows proper procedures. Good, I also want you to schedule a staff meeting for tomorrow morning. We'll be implementing new training protocols and reviewing our customer service standards. As Victoria spoke, her phone rang. It was Karen, her executive assistant, calling back with updates on the termination paperwork and legal consultation she had requested. Karen, yes. No, process Patterson's termination immediately. Also contact our insurance company about potential discrimination liability. Yes, I know it's serious. That's exactly why we're taking swift action. While Victoria handled the administrative details, she noticed that Derek was still standing nearby, apparently hoping for some kind of reprieve. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by desperation as the reality of unemployment set in. Miss Thompson, Derek interrupted her phone call. Please, I have a family to support. Maybe I could transfer to another location or take a demotion. Or ... Victoria ended her call and turned to face Derek. The time to think about consequences was before you decided to treat customers with disrespect and discrimination. You had multiple opportunities today to demonstrate professionalism, and you chose otherwise. But I was just following Mr. Patterson's lead. You're an adult who made your own choices. Patterson's behavior doesn't excuse your own actions. Victoria's voice was firm but not cruel. I hope you'll learn from this experience and treat people better in your future employment. Derek realized that pleading was futile and began the humiliating process of collecting his personal belongings under the watchful eyes of customers and former colleagues. His departure served as a powerful message to the remaining staff about the real consequences of discriminatory behavior. Meanwhile, the elderly black gentleman who had been ignored earlier was now receiving enthusiastic attention from two sales representatives. Victoria approached to observe the interaction and ensure it was genuine rather than just performative. "Good afternoon, sir," one of the sales reps was saying. "I apologize for not greeting you sooner. Are you interested in the sedan you were looking at?" The gentleman, who introduced himself as Dr. James Washington, smiled warmly. "Yes, it's quite impressive. I'm recently retired and looking for something reliable and comfortable." "Wonderful. I'm Jennifer, and I'd be happy to show you all the features. Would you like to sit inside and get a feel for it?" Victoria was pleased to see that Jennifer's enthusiasm appeared genuine. Dr. Washington was clearly a well-educated professional who deserved the same consideration as any other customer. As Jennifer opened the car door and began explaining the luxury features, Victoria made a mental note to recognize her improved attitude during future evaluations. The Hernandez couple was also receiving much better service now. The sales associate helping them had discovered that Carlos owned a successful construction company and was looking for a reliable vehicle for business use. What had initially been dismissed as an unlikely sale was actually a substantial business opportunity. "We've been saving for 3 years for the right vehicle," Maria Hernandez explained to the sales associate. "We wanted something that would last and reflect well on Carlos's business." Victoria realized how many similar opportunities had probably been lost due to the discriminatory practices at this location. Successful small business owners, retired professionals, and other qualified customers had likely been driven away by the unwelcoming atmosphere her staff had created. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her corporate attorney. The legal implications of Patterson's systematic discrimination training were potentially severe, including possible federal civil rights violations and class action lawsuits from affected customers. Victoria knew she would need to document everything carefully and implement comprehensive reforms to protect the company. "Attention everyone," Victoria announced to the showroom. "I want to share something important with all our customers and staff." The conversations gradually quieted as people turned their attention to Victoria. Some customers had remained to witness the unprecedented events, clearly fascinated by the dramatic transformation they were observing. This company was founded on the principle that exceptional automotive products should be accessible to anyone who desires them, regardless of their background. Today, I discovered that some of our employees had lost sight of those values, and I've taken immediate action to correct the situation. Victoria gestured toward Dr. Washington and the Hernandez family. "These customers and others like them represent exactly the kind of people we're proud to serve. They've worked hard, saved their money, and deserve the best possible experience when they choose to do business with us." Dr. Washington nodded approvingly. "I appreciate what you're doing, young lady. I've dealt with this kind of treatment at other businesses, but it takes courage to address it so directly." "Thank you, Dr. Washington. Your experience today should have been welcoming from the moment you walked in. That's my commitment to you and to every customer who chooses Thompson Luxury Motors." Victoria turned to address her staff again. "I want everyone to understand that what happened here today isn't just about following rules or avoiding legal problems. It's about basic human dignity and good business practice. When we treat people with respect, we build lasting relationships that benefit everyone." Jennifer, who was still working with Dr. Washington, raised her hand. "Miss Thompson, I want to apologize for not stepping up sooner. I knew some of our practices weren't right, but I was worried about challenging management." "That's exactly why we're implementing new protocols," Victoria replied. "Every employee should feel empowered to provide excellent service without fear of management disapproval. In fact, I want to encourage that kind of initiative." "What if we see discriminatory behavior in the future?" asked another sales associate. "You report it immediately to HR or to me personally. We'll have anonymous reporting systems in place, and anyone who retaliates against employees for reporting discrimination will be terminated." Victoria could see the relief on several faces among her staff. It was becoming clear that Patterson's toxic leadership had created an environment where good employees felt pressured to compromise their values. By removing that pressure and establishing clear expectations, she was giving them permission to do the right thing. "Marcus," Victoria called out to her new interim manager, "I want you to personally ensure that Dr. Washington and the Hernandez family receive VIP treatment. Anything they need, test drives, detailed explanations, financing consultations, make it happen." "Absolutely, Miss Thompson." As the afternoon progressed, Victoria observed a complete transformation in the showroom atmosphere. Staff members were actively engaging with all customers, offering refreshments, and taking time to understand individual needs. The change was dramatic and immediate, but Victoria knew that sustaining it would require ongoing effort and vigilance. Her phone rang again with another update from corporate headquarters. Word of the situation had already reached her other dealership managers, and several had called expressing concern about their own practices. Victoria realized this incident would serve as a catalyst for reviewing and improving operations company-wide. 3 weeks later, Victoria stood in the same showroom where her undercover investigation had revealed such troubling truths. The transformation was remarkable and went far beyond the immediate changes she had witnessed that dramatic afternoon. The space buzzed with genuine enthusiasm and professional energy as staff members engaged with a diverse group of customers. Dr. Washington had become a regular customer, having purchased the luxury sedan and already referring 2 of his retired colleagues to the dealership. His positive experience had generated word-of-mouth marketing that no advertising campaign could have achieved. He often stopped by just to chat with Jennifer, who had become his trusted automotive advisor. The Hernandez family had also completed their purchase, buying not just one SUV but arranging fleet pricing for 3 additional vehicles for Carlos's growing construction business. Their success story had been featured in the dealership's newsletter as an example of how building genuine relationships led to long-term business partnerships. Victoria had implemented comprehensive changes across all 15 of her dealerships following the Riverside Hills incident. The reforms included mandatory diversity training, revised hiring practices, anonymous reporting systems for discrimination complaints, and regular mystery shopper evaluations to ensure consistent customer service standards. "Miss Thompson," Marcus approached with obvious pride, "I wanted to show you this month's sales figures." Victoria reviewed the report and was impressed by what she saw. The Riverside Hills location, which had been underperforming for months under Patterson's management, was now exceeding corporate sales targets by 12%. More importantly, customer satisfaction scores had improved dramatically, and the demographic diversity of their clientele had expanded significantly. "These numbers are excellent, Marcus. How do you explain the improvement?" "It's actually pretty simple," Marcus replied. "When we stopped making assumptions about people and started treating everyone with respect, we discovered customers we never knew existed. That elderly lady who bought the Mercedes convertible? She paid cash. The young couple who looked like college students? They were both software engineers with excellent credit." Victoria nodded with satisfaction. The business case for equality was proving itself every day. By eliminating discriminatory practices, the dealership hadn't just improved ethically, it had become more profitable and successful. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "Several other dealerships in the area have started copying our customer service approach. Word has gotten out about what happened here, and it's actually becoming a competitive advantage for us." Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from her public relations manager. The story of her undercover investigation had been picked up by several business magazines and news outlets. Rather than trying to suppress the coverage, Victoria had chosen to embrace it as an opportunity to demonstrate corporate accountability and positive change. "Miss Thompson?" Jennifer approached with a young black woman who appeared to be in her 20s. "This is Kaisha Johnson. She's interested in our entry-level luxury sedan, and she's also a recent business school graduate looking for career opportunities." Victoria smiled and extended her hand to Kaisha. "Wonderful to meet you, Kaisha. What kind of career interests you?" Automotive sales, actually. I've been following your company's story in the business press, and I'm really impressed by your leadership and values. I'd love to be part of an organization that puts principles into practice. We're always looking for talented people who share our commitment to excellence and inclusivity. Marcus, please make sure Kaisha gets information about our management training program. As Victoria watched Kaisha and Jennifer discuss both vehicle features and career opportunities, she reflected on how the crisis had ultimately strengthened her company. The painful experience of discovering discrimination within her own organization had forced her to examine and improve systems across all locations. The legal implications had been successfully managed through proactive cooperation with civil rights organizations and comprehensive policy reforms. Rather than facing lawsuits and negative publicity, Thompson Luxury Motors had become a model for how companies should respond when discrimination issues are discovered. Miss Thompson, Dr. Washington approached with his characteristic warm smile. I wanted to thank you again for the way you handled that situation a few weeks ago. My granddaughter is starting her own business, and she mentioned that she's been inspired by your leadership style. That means a great deal coming from you. Dr. Washington, has Jennifer been taking good care of your automotive needs? She's been exceptional. In fact, I'm thinking about upgrading to one of your hybrid models. Jennifer's been educating me about the environmental benefits, and I think it's time for me to do my part for the next generation. Victoria appreciated how Dr. Washington had become more than just a customer. He had become an advocate and ambassador for the dealership. His positive experiences were generating referrals and helping to build the kind of community relationships that sustained long-term business success. Brian, the employee who had chosen diversity training over termination, approached with obvious nervousness. Ms. Thompson, I wanted to update you on my progress and thank you for giving me a second chance. How has the training been going, Brian? It's been eye-opening, honestly. I never realized how my assumptions were affecting customers and coworkers. The training helped me understand that good customer service means treating everyone as an individual rather than making judgments based on appearance. Brian's genuine remorse and commitment to improvement had impressed Victoria. His transformation demonstrated that people could change when given proper education and motivation. His story had become part of the company's training materials, showing other employees that mistakes could be learning opportunities rather than career-ending disasters. I've been working with Maria Hernandez on expanding the fleet services for her husband's construction company, Brian continued. She's referred 3 other business owners to us, and I'm learning that building relationships is much more rewarding than just trying to close quick sales. Victoria was pleased to see Brian's professional growth. The experience had taught her that while some employees like Derek and Patterson were too set in their discriminatory ways to change, others could evolve when given proper guidance and expectations. As the day continued, Victoria observed interactions throughout the showroom. The staff was genuinely engaging with customers of all backgrounds, and the atmosphere was professional yet welcoming. Children played quietly in the family area while parents discussed financing options. Elderly customers received patient explanations of new technology features. Young professionals were treated as serious buyers rather than dismissed as window shoppers. Miss Thompson, a customer approached her directly. I'm Robert Chun, and I wanted to tell you how impressed I am with the service here. My wife and I have been shopping for a luxury SUV for months, and this is the first dealership where we felt genuinely welcomed and respected. That's exactly what we strive for. Mr. Chun, have you had a chance to test drive any of our models? Yes, Jennifer arranged for us to take the hybrid SUV home for the weekend so we could see how it fits our daily routine. That level of trust and service convinced us to make the purchase. Victoria made a mental note to recognize Jennifer's exceptional performance during the next staff meeting. The weekend test drive program had been one of the new initiatives implemented to demonstrate trust in customers while providing superior service experiences. As evening approached and the showroom began to quiet down, Victoria gathered her staff for a brief meeting. Looking around at the team, she saw faces that reflected pride, confidence, and genuine commitment to the company's values. "I want to thank all of you for embracing the changes we've implemented," Victoria began. "The results speak for themselves. We're serving more customers, generating more sales, and building stronger community relationships than ever before." Marcus raised his hand. "Miss Thompson, the staff wanted me to tell you that this is the most positive work environment any of us have experienced. When we can focus on helping people instead of making judgments, it makes our jobs more meaningful." Victoria felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The crisis that had initially seemed like a devastating blow to her company's reputation had become the catalyst for creating something better than what existed before. By confronting discrimination honestly and implementing comprehensive reforms, Thompson Luxury Motors had not just recovered, it had emerged stronger and more successful. "Remember," Victoria concluded, "what we've accomplished here isn't just about following policies or avoiding problems. It's about recognizing that every person who walks through our doors has dreams, goals, and the right to be treated with dignity. When we honor that principle, we succeed both as human beings and as business professionals." As Victoria prepared to leave the dealership that evening, she reflected on the journey that had brought her company to this point. The painful discovery of discrimination within her own organization had forced difficult conversations and challenging changes, but it had ultimately revealed the true character of her team and her company's potential for positive impact. The undercove,